Today we're going to be talking about preparing for 2024. If it's anything like 2023 and really the 2020s, I mean, just think about what we've gone through in the last 4 years. It's going to be a ride. It's going to be interesting. But specifically in this session, I'm going to talk about changes coming to email specifically in 2024, and also talk at the high level, the broader global landscape that'll impact marketing as a whole and email as well. And you'll be able to leave with some great ideas of some high level strategic and tactical initiatives that'll start next year in the right space for you. A little about me. I'm VP of Strategy and Marketing at InboxArmy, a full service email marketing agency. I've been in the email space for 15 years. Running email programs at brands like Purple Mattress, 1-800-CONTACTS. I've worked in the higher ed space. I've been agency side as well, and just love email, love talking about email. So I'm really happy about this opportunity. I call this the obligatory company slide. If you're interested in knowing who InboxArmy is, we're, again, full service email marketing agency. We're vendor agnostic. We serve clients across 40 different platforms, 15 plus industries. Basically, if it involves email, it's likely we can do it. Now that that's done, let's talk about the 2024 landscape. What are we going to have to deal with in the coming year? And I want to just show some headlines I've seen in the last few weeks that, really showed the coming year may be volatile, just like 2023 was. In the States, we saw that, Black Friday broke records all over the place, but you're seeing that people are buying gifts on credit. They're using Klarna and Affirm, which are those buy now, pay later services. And so people who are buying on credit may not have money in this coming year. Recession fears are still there. In the US, it seems that, there's a debate about just how strong the economy is here. And even with just having those conversations, people start treating money differently. Just like COVID created a world-changing economic environment, dramatically shifting buying behaviors. Recessions can do the same thing, right? Less money in the economy means even more competition for sales and revenue that do happen. So it just makes email harder. And it also extends consideration cycles, right? People take longer to make decisions about purchases. You may need to dive into deeper discounts and keep track of behavioral changes that you may. I feel like buyer behavior has changed every single year in this decade, much faster than we've seen in previous decades. And that's just what I would consider the macro environment. Let's talk about what's coming to email specifically in 2024. You've probably heard this already. I'm sure you have. Email standards are changing with Gmail and Yahoo starting February 1st. The high-level requirements are going to get stronger. They're strengthening authentication requirements and spam complaint thresholds. SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, all your favorite acronyms, those authentications are going to be required, particularly for large senders, which are defined as those who send more than 5,000 emails to more than 5,000 Gmail addresses in a day. And then spam complaints are going to get tighter. The threshold's getting tighter. Gmail's asking people to stay at or below 0.1% spam complaint rate as much as possible, and to avoid hitting 0.3%. If you hit 0.3%, it's going to cause a lot of problems for your deliverability. They're going to start blocking. They're going to start spam boxing. A lot of that. That threshold's pretty low. So we have a higher standard to meet. They're also requiring that email marketers move to one-click unsubscribe in email, and to process all email unsubscribes within 2 business days. In the States, we have a 10-day requirement under CAN-SPAM, but the providers are pushing to 2-day. Now, if you're a good sender with good sending practices and you have all these authentication pieces set up and running, you're in good shape. But if not, you've got a month. You got a month to get this all set up. Also, in terms of data, we're entering the cookieless world. And that means needing zero and first party data. Google's going to start January 1st deprecating 1% of their third party cookies. Their goal is to phase out cookies altogether by Q3. I'm not bullish personally on whether that timeline will hold, because they keep pushing back the deadline, but you should operate within the understanding that that's going to be the deadline that happens, that comes to fruition. But we've been fighting this already, right? With Firefox, Safari, Edge. There's others that block cookies already. Apple iOS users can already opt out of app tracking and other pieces like that. So this is nothing really new. It's just we keep moving the goalposts. It keeps getting a little bit harder. Now, email marketers, I believe, are uniquely positioned to help weather this change because we want that data. We want to collect that data. We want to collect the zero-party data, which is what customers tell you they want, what they tell you about you. And then, the first-party data is what a customer does. So putting those all together, you say, hey, we've been asking for this data forever. Let's push to get more opt-ins. Let's push to get more signups because that's how you get them on the list, right? That's what we've been talking about. But then, of course, you want more data. And then what's the next goalpost that's moving? Privacy. Of course, privacy is going to get a little harder. We already have what iOS 14 really hurt Facebook. iOS 15 has changed open tracking with email, with mail privacy protection. With iOS 17 that just got released, we've got link tracking protection. They're stripping out special links from HubSpot and others, right? Your UTM parameters are still in good shape. But if you've been relying on some of those specialized platform-specific parameters, those are being stripped out if they're using link tracking protection in Apple Mail or private Safari. We've also got 10 U.S. states will have privacy laws in place by the end of 2024. You're already dealing with GDPR, ICO in the UK, CASL in Canada, CCPA here in California. So it's just getting more difficult, right? It's going to be this balance between serving our customers' desire to be personal and relevant, which we need data for, but then actually getting the data we need to support those efforts. I don't want to just paint a bad picture here, but we got to sort of establish what we're up against, but it's not all bad news. We've got AI. AI is we're going to have further adoption of AI tools. I'm sure most of you out there have probably dabbled with ChatGPT or Claude for maybe subject lines or some copy, but we're already using AI in terms of data analysis, maybe on-site content personalization. Some of the ESPs out there are bringing in AI-driven journey mapping, where you can put somebody in and it'll build flows based off of that. And we're getting into the world of next best action and channel optimization, where maybe it's some of your customers really do need email. That's their next best action, but maybe SMS might be the next best action instead. And then we're into the world of AI-driven content libraries. I'll talk about this a little bit more later. But here I would say AI, don't think of AI as a job killer. Think of AI as a job enhancer. Because if you adopt AI and make it part of your own tool set, you become a much better marketer for the future. And speaking of tech advancements, I don't know if you heard this, but Apple announced that RCS is coming to iPhone next year. I call it SMS on steroids, but SMS and email are perfect partners in crime. So if you're an email marketer, you should be owning SMS as well in your organization. They go together really well. SMS opt-in means a higher level of intent, because remember, it's interruption, it's intrusive. And for people who are asking to be interrupted, they are more likely to convert. And they're great complementary channels in terms of cadence, frequency of messaging, great for the customer experience, of course, account reminders, shipping reminders, all those sorts of things are really great with SMS. If you do it right, you expect higher conversion rates, and there is a cost to think about as well. I've been talking a bunch about other things besides email, I've been in email for 15 years, and I've been hearing email is dead for 15 years. But if you want to get more budget for your department, more budget for what you're doing, let's think about where email fits in. $36 ROI is still what's happening with email. I've, again, been doing this for 15 years. I've seen it anywhere between $32 and $45 in terms of ROI for email. It's just pull this ROI number for yourself and go to your boss and say, hey, email is cost effective. It's profitable for us. It has conversion power. It has staying power. And inevitably, your boss is going to turn around and say, yeah, but I don't really like email. So why? Nobody uses email anymore. And you can go, that's just not true. Here's some stats. Email still delivers because everyone uses it. 92% of online adults use email. 99% of them check email every day. They're not a freak like me who checks every 5 minutes, but I'm an email. It's what I do. 58% of users, myself is included in this, check their email before they do anything else during the day. When they wake up, it's the first thing they check out. By 2025, there will be 4.5 billion, half the world will be on email by 2025. And 79% of marketers still place email in their top 3 in terms of most effective channels. So given all this challenge and benefit from email, I'm calling 2024 the year to get things right. There are so many changes coming. Like I said, you have to get things right. You can't skip steps anymore. You got to work with your internal team and your email service provider on getting all those authentication pieces in place. You got to make sure your opt-out practices are set up correctly. You just have to get things right because the penalties are going to be more stringent coming here in 2024. So I've boiled down 3 main goals for 2024 that I see. These are my recommendations. So first things first, get your email house in order. Let's talk about that authentication piece. Make sure you get SPF and DKIM set up. Make sure DMARC is set up. Now you can set it to equal none, which is sort of the base layer of DMARC authentication, but you have to have DMARC authentication in place. If you don't support one-click unsubscribe, switch to it. Ensure all unsubscribes are processed within 2 days from receipt. And this could mean replies for email. This could mean phone calls to your customer care where they say, take me off your list. Make sure that that can be processed as quickly as possible. I've even seen people send in handwritten letters. I don't think that's as true anymore, but I've seen that where handwritten letters come in to go take me off your list. Make sure that once those are received, that you're getting them processed as soon as possible. And of course, monitor bounces, but more importantly, monitor spam complaints. Ensure those tighter thresholds aren't hit. And if they are, you got some work to do. Speaking of work to do, how do you add on another layer to this? Let's embrace list hygiene. Unsubscribe those who mark you as spam. Unsubscribe those who hard bounce. Most ESPs do it for you automatically, but if they don't, make sure that you go through and unsubscribe them, suppress them, however you need to do it to get rid of them. Unsubscribe those who soft bounce multiple times. Again, if you can't set rules within your ESP, if you have pull people who go, they've soft bounced 3 times in 7 days, whatever rule set you think makes sense for your cadence and frequency and business model, think conservatively, think aggressively in terms of shorter time frame for those. And then if you need to, perform list hygiene every 6 to 12 months to make sure that you're cleaning people out. The big reason for this is that Gmail, if you've had a list, if you've been running an email program for 10 years, and you probably have people on your list still from 10 years ago, Gmail's starting to close down inactive accounts, people who haven't gone in and looked at email within the past 2 years. It seems to be a slow roll, but that could start moving quicker. So perform list hygiene, get those people off your list as soon as you can. And the next piece there is to build your list the right way. Now, I know a lot of you are, potentially in Europe and you're not doing this. In the US, this is legal. Do not buy email lists. Just don't do it. They don't work. I get this question a lot from potential clients of, they want to take shortcuts. There just aren't shortcuts. 15 years ago, you could have bought a list and basically printed money. But between, spam filters and how people interact with email these days, it's just not a good idea. That the juice is not worth the squeeze. But use this as an opportunity, especially with the zero-party and first-party data becoming even more important than it is you can get aggressive on how you collect data directly. Be aggressive on pop-ups. I know we all say we hate pop-ups, but they work. use landing pages, use website capture, product registration. If somebody buys from you without raising their hand as an email subscriber first, use your onboarding process to collect more data about your customers. You can leverage social media to drive to those landing pages. You can use events, in-person events. I will say, make sure that people understand proper opt-in. That, like, say they drop their business card into a bowl, that you're saying, by doing this, you say yes to getting email from us, or, scans or whatever it might be. But you don't have to be shy about collecting information. It all comes back to permission and transparency. So be transparent and intentional about the data you collect and how you plan to use it. Privacy policies are a huge thing. Don't collect data you don't plan to use, but collect the data you want to use, collect it. Just collect a lot of it. And the reason this is so important and why permission is so important is it's all about consent, and that customers have the right to be forgotten. So I'm not a lawyer, so don't take me word for word, and talk to your legal team about what this all means specifically to you. But really, it just means consent must be freely given, meaning it's not like a paywall to use your service, if that makes sense. Like, people should be able to buy from you and go, I don't want email from you. It must be specific, meaning they know exactly what they're signing up for. They must be informed about what they're signing up for, and it shouldn't be confusing about what they sign up for. And then understand that consent in any way can be revoked at any time. Now, good email marketers, the proper permission-based email marketers, none of this should be new to you. But I feel like the end of year, beginning of year is always a good time to kind of take a look back, reflect, right? And speaking of that reflection, this is also a great time to do an email audit. We like to say this is where we call the baby ugly. Take an honest assessment of your program. Identify what's working, what's not working. Is your current tech stack enough? Do you need new tech to determine where you can make improvements? And then you take this learning and you take, all this look back, and you build a plan that'll boost engagement, that'll improve metrics. It gives you something to come back to when you're 6 months into 2024 and go, are we accomplishing our goals for this year? And speaking of, and how do you build that? I'm talking about foundational pieces. The next goal is to cement these foundations of your customer experience. And part of that audit can be thinking holistically about your customer journey. Now, this image is small, and I'll send this to you as a separate file that you can share in the notes for folks here. But put together some sort of visual of your customer journey. Identify where the decision points are that customers have to make in your journey, both before, where those hand raises are, and then start filling in gaps where email can come in terms of customer marketing, communications. This is a very generalized example, but the arrows at the bottom are automated programs that could be built to support these different phases. And yes, they can repeat based on whether they're a new customer or, a repeat customer. But, I look at this type of journey and then I go, okay, where are we delivering value? Because every email you send needs to deliver value. Value can mean any number of things, right? It could mean education. It could mean promotion in terms of a sale or an offer. It could be any number of things, but it's how you answer what's next for your customers, how you make this email journey as seamless as possible, reduce friction wherever possible. And you just want to make it obvious what you want done. Clear, consistent messaging is always important. And I go back to this journey, right? And I look back at where I can deliver value, and I always go, where can I start? Where should I go and review and make sure that I'm doing the right things for my customers? And I always start on those first touches where people enter your program. Great part of this is to look at this audit, and it's really those 3 key spots where customers come in and raise their hand and say, I need more information. I want more information. Yes, please talk to me. And that's at that initial subscription, your cart and checkout phase, and your first purchase phase. And really, if you get these three areas right, a lot of the other programs become easier, because first impressions are everything, which is why you go, why are we getting a reminder of all this? Because the number of times I get on calls with clients and they've forgotten about these, or they set up one welcome email a year ago and have never looked at it. They've never looked at optimizing the places where people want to engage and are at that point where they're ready to convert. That's why I come back to this all the time of January is the perfect time to make sure that all of those important first touches are in place. So let's dive right in. Let's talk about the new subscribers, those welcome programs that you hear so much about. Outside of an order confirmation and a shipping confirmation email, your best performing campaign is right here. People are asking for more information. Now, maybe it's they just want the discount you promised, and that's fine. But you need to deliver on that, right? You need to, whatever you promise, you need to deliver. So if it's a white paper, deliver a white paper. If it's a discount, deliver a discount. If it's whatever it might be, you need to deliver that in that first email. And you need at least one, right? 74% of customers expect an email right away when they sign up. And you need at least one. I usually don't stick with just one, but you need at least one here. Usually I get to 3 to 5, depends on how much information you want to bring up front, how big of a purchase it might be. And that's why it comes down to deliver on your promised incentive, whatever it might be. And then you set the tone and expectations for future messaging. If you're going to send them multiple emails in this series, you could say, hey, over the next 7 to 14 days, we're going to send you 5 more emails. And just let them know what's coming. And at the end of it, you need to answer what product or problem, what problems does your product solve? What value they should expect to receive, by being on your list? And then what are you expecting them to do now? What's the next step to interact? And as you reflect back on your welcome program or build it out anew, consider this. What is the goal of your welcome program? Is it an appointment? Is it a sale? Is it a download? Whatever it might be. And then consider how far along subscribers are in the consideration process by the time they raise their hands. I worked in higher ed for several years, and people who asked for more information, they went from, I'm ready to get started right now, to, I'm just thinking about going back to school in 18 to 24 months. And we built a welcome program that was, front loaded for those new people who are super interested and ready to go, and then dripped out over a long period of time for the people that were just looking for some more information. I always go start with linear assumptions that they're ready to act quickly. If you're in e-com, for example, they're likely ready to act quickly. So start with those assumptions. Don't be afraid to ask questions of your customers, and then iterate as you get more data, as you learn about your conversion rates. Speaking of being at the precipice of conversions, let's talk about cart abandon. You really want them to complete the purchase. I mean, obviously, right? They were so close. I always say don't jump too quickly to offer incentives. Customers are getting smarter. They're expecting to wait an hour and be able to save 25%. Don't hurt your margin. Don't give it away right away. It's about reminding people. Often people just need a reminder. They forget. They were mid cart and then got distracted by a call from their boss, or their kid came home, whatever it might be. They got cold feet and just didn't clear out the cart. They may have some payment issues. There are a number of reasons why they didn't finish. So be helpful. Get them to, offer, like you can see this example here on, from Whiskey Loot, the left example there. They basically presented an FAQ, frequently asked questions email. And I thought this is super effective. You're being helpful. You're say, hey, if you're ready, get going. But it's that customer service angle that I think is super important here to get people over the finish line without necessarily offering them a discount. Now, if you do a 3 email, you can see, a 3 email cycle here, maybe the third email you go, oh, by the way, do you need free shipping or do you need 10% off? What it might be, whatever that incentive might be, but don't lead off with that. Wait them out a little bit, protect your margin. Some key considerations, like I said, most people just need a reminder, but find out the reasons why they're abandoning. Did you, could be cost, could be shipping, could be any number of things, but also ask yourself very clearly, did you encourage the abandon? Several years ago, Best Buy used to do a get sale pricing cart function on their site. And I can only imagine how many cart abandons they drove simply because of that action. So are you driving people to abandon because of how you present that type of process? And also, I say cart and checkout abandon, they're two slightly different things. And checkout abandon is great because if they get to the point where they're about to pay for it and then they abandon, for the people that this might be their first hand raise with you, that they've never, because carts, you don't necessarily have an email address for people, for everybody, right? So if you have a sort of a nuanced version of cart abandon that brings in some elements of welcome for people who've never raised their hands until this point, that can be effective and sort of a cart abandon add-on to capture those new subscribers who may have stopped before purchase. Now, hopefully these work great and you get to the purchase right away. So let's talk about a couple areas where how you handle purchases become important. Let's talk about onboarding. Sometimes people feel they need to be helped feeling good about a purchase, buyer's remorse, right? So really the point of these emails is to get people to use your product or service successfully, feel good about making the purchase, and lay out any steps that they need to follow to use the product or service. You can, if you're a SaaS vendor, for example, it may be how to get to use the software, get into it, maybe you have a certification program or whatever it might be, getting people to use those so they become power users. So really you're answering how to use the product, and are there any adjustment periods or tricks to adoption? And this is important. When I worked at Purple Mattress, we had a 21-day adjustment period for the mattresses before you could return them, because it was such a different type of mattress that we wanted people to try it out for a little while so their body could adjust. It would be, it would feel weird. And, I have a Purple mattress. It's great. But again, it's about setting those expectations of this is what to expect in the first time you're using it. And that goes to that product learning curve. What is the learning curve for your product? What is the learning curve for your service? Are there next logical products? But going back to that learning curve, if it's a longer learning curve, it means more hands-on, more emails, more education, linking to chat, connecting to, might be some sort of concierge or customer service, right? That's where these emails become important. And on the next logical product, you maybe your catalog is 250 products deep. And you go, my God, I don't have one of these for upsell, or really this isn't a cross-sell upsell, right? How do you get them to make that second purchase with products that make sense, that work together with their first purchase? Think about, with mattresses, it was sheets and pillows. With a laptop, it might be a mouse and keyboard, or God forbid, a printer. It's, what are those products? And if you haven't started here, start with your best sellers. What are the products that are getting purchased the most in that first purchase? And then start doing some next logical product messaging off of those, and then build out from there. Don't think you have to boil the ocean. You can adopt a crawl, walk, run approach. And I want to discuss the second component of purchases, which is less sexy, but if not more important, which is building a positive customer experience around order confirmation, shipping confirmation, fulfillment, right? Because ultimately you can get the purchase, but if you fail on the fulfillment side, it can really damage the brand, because people, the shipping process influences everything in terms of feedback, in terms of referrals, in terms of word of mouth, all those pieces. But so how can you use email? Email really becomes the transparent, out in front messaging, right? If when the order confirmations, you get that digital paper trail, right? You get that digital receipt. When the products get shipped, if there are any delays, when to expect it. I mean, I recently bought a pillow from a different company, and they must have emailed me 6 times around the shipping, and I loved it because I always knew where my stuff was, right? And the goal here is to reduce we call it WISMO here, the where's my order phone calls to customer care, right? And anytime you can reduce customer care's workload, the better. Provide tracking information. You can leverage dynamic imagery here. There's partners that can help you do that. Drive to the app if you have one. Make it, just make it easy to know where things are and over communicate, because it's really important to understand that fulfillment comes before product, before brand, in terms of how customers will view this now. Because even if the product is great, they may never order from you again if the fulfillment process was awful. So just don't forget about this piece. Positive customer experience drives everything. Positive word of mouth drives repeat purchases. And if you do this really well, don't be afraid to start asking for referrals. Build a loyalty program if it makes sense. But don't forget this piece of your email. I know this is a lot and a lot of foundational pieces. So the third goal I want to get to is a little about process, but also just about embracing testing and new tech inside and outside of email. And let's start with testing. Testing is less about, I always find that testing is less about the actual results and more about the approach, because it's more about a systems approach. How do you get into a process and a flow of testing all the time? And how do you get buy-in for that sort of thing? So really work on how to adopt a consistent approach and plan to testing. You can test a hypothesis multiple times. In fact, you should. The number of times I've been asked to run a test on a random Tuesday in April and then make decisions based off of that one send. I mean, it's more than I can count on one hand. And that just doesn't work, because all you learn with running a test on one day is what worked on that random Tuesday in April. So be sure to, unless it's just absolute bomb of a test, which is super rare, test it multiple times. Get rid of that sort of seasonality, that time of day aspect. You have to do it multiple times so you can shake out the outliers. For automations in particular, you need to run a test for a long time, because you need the volume in that test to find learnings. So part of the process you need to adopt is figuring out a way to present your plan in a way that leadership will buy into, because leadership always wants things now. And you have to go, no, we have to run this for, 5-6 weeks to make sure that we can learn and adopt that. When I ran tests at a previous life, it was in 6 weeks, where we did 80-20 for the first 2 weeks. If it looked successful, we'd do 50-50 for 2 weeks. And then in the last 2 weeks, if it was still successful, that the test was still successful, we would run a 20-80 just to be sure. And then that became the new control if it won after that. And make sure that these tests are tangibly different from each other. If you're testing a rounded edge versus a squared edge CTA button, I hope you've tested a whole bunch of other things first, because the odds of you getting something statistically significant out of that are pretty low. And then the process really becomes about embracing failure. Most tests won't win. Actually, most tests won't lose either. About 90% of the tests I've run in my career have been flat. And then the remaining 10%, half of them have won, half of them have lost. So it boils down to, are you testing to win, or are you testing to replace? And the difference there is, if you're testing to win, then you need a statistically significant winner. If you're testing to replace, and a great example of this is, let's say you're doing a rebrand and you're redesigning all of your emails. You want to test the new designs against the old designs and get to equal, get to flat, right? You basically go, okay, a win here is to get to a flat result. You don't want the new design to lose, but you don't necessarily need it to win either. It just needs to get to flat, and you can go, okay, great. Now we can flip over to the new design. The cool thing about emails, you can test just about everything, right? So, here's just a few ideas for testing. Obviously, subject lines. You can do personalization. Maybe that's in the subject line or elsewhere. Some great tests I've run are short versus long content. Plain text versus designed emails are a great test to run as well. I found plain text performs really well in sort of a disruptive way because people are used to seeing designs. So sometimes plain text really jumps out. And offer tests. And this can vary greatly. When I was in the mattress company, we found that dollar off performed better than percent off. And it could be sometimes that you're testing values as well. It could be 15% versus 12%. Those different non-rounded numbers can really make a difference. And sometimes you find that 12% works better than 15%, even though 15% is the better deal. And same deal with the percent off versus dollar off. You may find dollar off works better, even though the percent off is a better deal. So those are things you need to find out for yourself. Of course, cadence and frequency. If you're sending once a week, start testing twice a week, or vice versa. And of course, audience testing. That can mean any number of things. Let's see. Joanne, I see your question here. I'll jump over to that before the next slide. So, when communicating price changes through email, what would you consider the best way to do that? There's a couple ways to do this. Obviously, transparency. If it's a big, and you can also use it as a way to drive urgency. Like let's say your price changes go live February 1st, you could message in January, hey, our prices are going up February 1st, lock in your price now. So there is a marketing angle to that. But again, it's about transparency there as well, right? So I would just lean into that, be upfront with it. And if you do have lead time, like I've worked in companies where we use price change as a marketing opportunity, right? Of, hey, we have to raise prices, but get in now. You could even overlap and go, a couple weeks into the price change and go, here's a coupon code to get the old price. But if you don't do by then, you're on the new price. There's a lot of little nuances there, but that's how I would approach it. Let's get back to RCS a little bit. We're striving for personalization and a better customer experience always. RCS, once it gets further adoption, I know, the Android group it's been available in Android, but now with Apple, I know outside of the States, Android's more prevalent than Apple. Here in the States, Apple is, half the market share. With Apple adopting it, potentially, we don't know fully what it means yet, but let's take a look at what RCS is now. I'm calling it SMS and MMS on steroids. It's going to be a better experience for SMS. There's better security, there's better branding, there's more robust features. We'll finally get better reporting, because right now opens are fuzzy. We say we get 98% opens, and you can go, yes, but that's because you kind of have to open it to get rid of it. But the cool thing is that you'll be able to send through marketing, a marketing SMS, RCS, video, high res photos, interactive elements. There's going to be some shopping experiences, unique product recommendations, like how we power an email. You'll be able to power that through RCS. There's a lot of cool features here that we just need to keep an eye on as adoption progresses here in 2024. And again, with tech, staying on this, AI-driven messaging, AI is the big buzz acronym, right? I think we are entering the age of what I call prompt engineers, and we'll call it smarter personalization, but I'll also call it tile creators. And the reason I say that is I was at a conference about a month ago, and a brand was showcased how they built an AI-driven engine for their messaging. And what they did was they built out a big library of content, and then trained an AI to learn it, and then essentially went, hey, when we have a new message, go tell the AI to go pull from and this is super simplified. I'm sure it's much more complicated, but they were able to use AI to drive 750 versions of their Black Friday messages. When they said that, there was an audible gasp in the room, right? People went, that's a lot. And I think we're headed there. They're ahead of the curve a bit, but I think full email builds are going to go largely away. You're still going to have these one-offs where maybe it's a special service message from the CEO or whatever it might be, but your regular marketing messages are going to, with the work done up front by you and your teams, you're going to be building a library of content and then having AI help you test and version. So I would say my recommendation is to jump 2 feet in and start working on this stuff, right? Because that's what's going to happen. Again, AI is not going to replace you, but AI is going to help you tremendously. So really, I mean, we've got these 3 goals, right? Get your house in order, make sure your customer experience is locked down, and then adopt testing and new tech. And really what it boils down to is this. I mean, really, this whole presentation is the only constant here is change. I think email marketers are best equipped to lead progress and success in this privacy filled, AI driven world. Simply because we're stewards of the data. We're on the ground in the data every day. We're on the ground with customer communication. So embrace that process for testing and constant change. Just assume things are going to change left and right. Keep an eye on world events, right? Financial markets, consumer debt. It's an election year coming up here in the States, which is so much fun. Really, it started 2 years ago, but that's another story. And just all these things can impact consumer behavior. I mean, heck, war, right? There are places in the world that are at war, and clearly that affects consumer behavior. So take that into consideration. Get a good grasp on seasonality in your own business and your industry. And when you're in season, treat your in season times and your out of season times differently. Hopefully January is maybe it's a potential out of season time. And that's why it's a great time to do all of these things to get you ready for the times when you're in season. And then of course, champion the channel, press forward on data collection whenever possible, and just keep rocking, guys. We are, the first line. And now I'll open it up to questions.
Okay, Scott, thank you very much for the presentation. It was so informative and inspiring. A lot of tips, ideas. Okay, now there is no question in the chat, but I'll use this opportunity to ask a question from me. How do you address the balance between providing value-driven content and promotional content in the emails?
Oh, the age-old question. It's one that's, if you're known for discounts, right? I mean, I think what happens with content when you get overly promotional is you train your customers to expect that. So it becomes that your value prop is that offer, right? But I think you can balance. I mean, and it's something to test into, but I've always had it where people go, "Oh, you just need one block with one CTA," and therefore, if you have only one place to do some messaging, then you're in trouble if you have to balance that, right? But you should intersperse, and I found great success with this when I worked at Purple. Was we had offer emails that were like offer first, and then we had emails that were more informational about, like, that led with information about sleep and the science of sleep and how the technology in the mattress really helped do that. And then it would be like, oh, by the way, here's the offer at the bottom, right? So you would have that balance, and you could flip them and you can test them. So it really becomes a matter of testing. The best email marketers in the world are ones who they're actually the best testers. So that's where I would it is a hard balance to strike. And so it becomes, again, that in season and out of season piece that I talked about at the end, right? If you're out of season, use that as an opportunity to be more educational, be more value in terms of the less promotional stuff. And then when people have their wallets open at the big sales seasons, that's when you if you're going to compete against them, you're going to have to do an offer. There are some brands that have done, like, I think it was Cards Against Humanity, which is a really, dark comedy game. I don't know if it's overseas, but it's here in the States. And one year they actually doubled their price as their gag for Black Friday. And they got crazy sales. It was like, we're not going to do an offer. You have to pay us more. So, but that was in brand with them. That was in line with their brand. So you explore those opportunities to test more, and you may not see immediate conversion on those educational pieces, but you're sprinkling the seeds for them to convert later.
Oh, thank you. It makes sense. Okay. So I can't see any questions in the chat. So I hope everything was clear. I can say that all the tips, all your ideas are interesting, and really we live in really volatile times. We have a lot of risks, a lot of opportunities, and I wish our audience to use all the opportunities and just keep in mind all the risks and get to success with their businesses. Okay, and it's almost time to finish. Scott, do you have anything to add or highlight before we end?
No, I think I feel like I covered it pretty well.
Okay, thank you very much. Guys, follow Scott's InboxArmy and St. Paul's social media. Let's stay in touch. Just a reminder, every registered attendee will receive slides and the certificate by Friday. Once again, Scott, thank you for sharing your knowledge today. Guys, it was great to have you all watch and being engaged. Thank you. Enjoy the week ahead. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And goodbye. See you in the new year, 2024.
Thanks, everyone.